Hi everyone. Hello. Sorry for the delay. And well, I've just wrapped up, as some of you know, for sure that I've just wrapped up a tour on Michael's Castle in St. Petersburg, and now I'm here in Banias. Quite an interesting name, quite a curious name in general, and it's a place up north of Israel, and this area now is a hotspot and tours there are not really possible. But I have the video and I visited it in a completely different environment, and it was one of the most memorable tours because this is a quite a spectacular place, to be honest. Behind my back is well, actually, this is a photo from Wikipedia. Maybe it's not that impressive, but just like last week, we visited the Jordan River where the baptism of Jesus happened, and where also some other events important from the Old Testament. So that is the important for Judaism also happened. And actually, Banias is the place where the Jordan River starts, thanks to the water spring, quite plentiful. And it's just the footsteps of Mount Hermon. And also, Banias is important because exactly from Banias, Jesus and his disciples would set out on a trip to Jerusalem for Passover, and also his last visit to Jerusalem because on that visit Jesus would be crucified, and you know the story. And us as well, we are going to be following Jesus on his way to Jerusalem. We started in Galilee because this is the region where Jesus lived in the north of Israel. And yeah, we know that Jesus was born in Bethlehem, but he had to leave together with his family to Egypt because of the witch hunt that Herod started, the massacre of innocents that is called. After that, they returned to Nazareth, exactly where Mary and Joseph were from. And but the ministry of Jesus started, well, I would say 30 years later, and he was pushed away from Nazareth, and he would be coming back, and we would be visiting Nazareth, but we're starting where Jesus came into his own by the Lake Kinneret or the Sea of Galilee, which is uh, which was always at a crossroads of several trade routes, and especially the Via Maris that connected Africa, Egypt with Europe and Asia, and exactly by the Sea of Galilee, Via Maris transferred from the water to the land. And the Sea of Galilee exactly happened to be the area where the merchants would be going back and forth. And for Jesus, it was important to be there to spread his word because this is how his word would be passed on, not just from one person to another, but it would spread across the world. And we visited so many sites across the Sea of Galilee, almost all of them that you can see on the maps. We started with Capernaum, where Jesus settled down together with Peter. And we know that Jesus performed several miracles in Capernaum. And there is even a church now, modern church built above the space, above the place where Jesus is believed to have lived together with Peter. Also, not far, there is a church of Peter's primacy because Peter, and we'll be talking about it today as well, was exactly chosen by Jesus as his the most important of the disciples, and exactly on this bedrock that is part of the church architecture. As you know, my tours are not about theology. I don't preach on these tours, and it's not about religion. It's about archaeology and architecture of the pilgrimage site, of some holy sites. So the bedrock is part of the architecture of the church. This one is Mensa Christi. This is believed to be the place where Jesus had the breakfast with the disciples and told Peter to feed his sheep. Mount of Beatitudes, where Jesus read his Sermon on the Mount and gave the Beatitudes, the blessings. Also visited Tabha, a walking distance from the Mount of Beatitudes. the church of the Stadium of 5,000, the church of the multiplication, another miracle that is believed to have happened on the bedrock that is also included as a part of the church building. Most of the churches that we have discovered, discussed by now, were built in the okay, let's say turn of the 20th century, but some are a bit older. That is true, such as the one in the Nazareth. And all these churches are normally the sites, the places chosen to be for the churches to be built on. They well determined mostly by the Crusaders. 1,000 years ago, well, eight centuries ago, 9 centuries ago, and the Crusaders, when they came, they would be looking for the places defined in the Byzantine period. So this tradition and also archaeology, the presence of churches on this site from the previous period, that's what exactly would determine the choice of the location for the modern day churches. And exactly like at the church in Tapha, you see the part of the bedrock, which is believed to be that bedrock where the multiplication happened, and they had the feast of the 5,000 with the loaves of bread and the fishes enough to feed 5,000 of people. We visited an off-beaten spot called Kursi, where the miracle of swine happened, and Jesus cast away the demons from a man, and the demons went into the swines, and the swines committed a suicide in the Sea of Galilee. The place was found just by accident. They were about to build the road there, but before you build anything in Israel, you need to do the salvage excavations, and this is how so many fantastic things are discovered normally. Magdala, that's where Mary Magdalene is from. The most striking finding is the synagogue that dates back to the 1st century, which is times of Jesus. And we know that Jesus preached in many synagogues. And as a Jew, Jesus visited many synagogues. And this is the only synagogue found to the date in the place called Magdala that Jesus had visited, and where Jesus had performed miracles, even though he also cast away the demons from Mary, from Magdala herself. So, thanks to the findings, the coins found on the site, we can date it quite exactly to the times of Jesus, which is quite a striking finding. Cana, this is where the first miracle happened. Jesus was attending a wedding, and the Cana, and hence the church of the wedding church in Cana, and the miracle of turning water into wine, the Transfiguration Cathedral on the Mount Tabor, and this is an important sign because this is when Christianity in the New Testament kind of made allusion to the Old Testament. This is where Jesus transfigured before his disciples and his disciple, and he was also together with Moses and Elijah, and this is how Christianity kind of got it back up from Judaism, and all of that converged, and this is revealed the great meaning and the divine nature of Jesus. That's the story in a nutshell, very briefly. So what I'm saying is like very briefly. So for details, you know where to find the videos. Another church that is Nazareth, the Annunciation Cathedral. This is we're back to Nazareth because this is where Mary had the vision. She was visited by Gabriel, and he gave her the news. Most Catholics, well, according to Catholic tradition, Mary was visited by Gabriel in her house, and the church, the modern church, was built above the cave where Mary is believed to have lived together with her parents. And multiple churches in different periods, starting from the 1st century, actually, would be built on one and the same spot. Obviously, you couldn't build a church in the 1st century, obviously not. And up until the end of the Roman period, there would be no churches. As you know, Christianity would be severely persecuted by the Romans. But in a nutshell, So multiple churches would be built on top of another, and there is archaeology behind all of them. And it was all embraced by the construction of this church, of gigantic church in 1920s. The church before that, it's the St. Joseph Church. It is believed to be the place where Joseph lived himself, because it's not clear whether they lived together or not, since it was an immaculate conception. So that's just, well, I'll just leave it there. Also, very important is the well, the only well in Nazareth, and the church that is the Greek Orthodox Church, by the way, from 1760s, built above the Crusader spot that is built above the spring. Because according to one of the apocryphal Gospels, visitation happened by the spring when Mary was getting water. And there's only one spring in Nazareth, and this is that spring in Nazareth. So hence the church. And since nobody really knows who to believe, both Christians, well, I mean, all the Christian denominations would visit both churches, the Annunciation Cathedral, the Catholic one, and the Greek Orthodox one, that is the one we are looking at the moment. When I was there, I didn't have a chance to visit the spring, so the photos are from the internet. This is the Church of the Synagogue in Nazareth, where Jesus preached after he already returned. So by that time, he had already left Nazareth, so he returned. And some Jews in Nazareth didn't really like his preaching on Sabbath, and he was taken to the Mount of Precipice. They just wanted to throw him from the cliff, but he instead walked through everyone and left Nazareth, being rejected. Another site, Bethsaida, one of the sites that Jesus cursed because they did not believe in what he was saying. So Bethsaida and Nazareth were cursed by Jesus. And also one more place, which we will be visiting shortly. Which we visited already, the Chorazin. Chorazin was also cursed by Jesus. Then last time we visited the Jordan River, right? So the place of the baptism. And we stick here to Matthew as the oldest gospel, and the Jordan River, the source of which we will actually be visiting today. The recap is almost over, but I hope this is useful for you to just keep the track of what I'm saying. And the Jordan River is exactly the border between the state of Israel and the state of Jordan. So beware just not to cross the border. Also, by the Jordan River, there is the monastery, the Gerasimos Monastery, Greek Orthodox, and this is one of the oldest monasteries in general, and the monastic style, the monastic movement was started by Gerasimos. So this is one of the must visit for I would say for every Christian pilgrim in general, regardless of denomination. So Chorazin, that's the place. This was a Jewish village. We know that, and so Jesus came there to preach. He had shown multiple miracles, yet the people of Chorazin rejected him. So he said, "Woe to you, Chorazin! Woe to you, Bethsaida!" So he cursed both places for not following him, for not believing in his miracles. The archaeology that this had been a Jewish settlement. There is a mikveh, there is found a synagogue, and so now we are moving from the Sea of Galilee. You see, this is the Sea of Galilee, right? We are moving to Banias. And we are actually in the very, very north. We're going to be squeezed in between Syria and Lebanon and Syria. Quite a quite a contentious topic, to be honest. Well, let's start from the start. I like to give the extensive overview of the places that I show you. So I like to go back in times before Jesus and after, and to provide the multiple sources. just to prove the point. So in the Joshua 11, we read that from Mount Halak, which rises towards Seir, to Baal God in the valley of Lebanon below Mount Hermon, he captured all their kings and struck them down, putting them to death. So why this is important? Because actually it places us to the place, uh, Baal God, the Canaanite side, the pagan side, and so in the Joshua, there's so much of the description of the battle between the Canaanites, between the pagans and the Israelites. So and we are actually also happen to be at the footsteps of Mount Hermon, and not in the particular site, but in the Tel Dan, which I have already done a tour of. The recording is available for my sponsors and on demand. There have been found multiple items that belong to a certain pagan cult. Well, this is, for example, the one of the superior gods of Baal of the Canaanites, and this happens to be exactly that spot where the pagan worship had been going for 3,000 years at least. And you can see there are small waterfalls. Actually, there's also a big waterfall up high, but we're not going there. But we are very close to Mount Hermon. And the water that you can see here, the small waterfalls, this is all the water coming from the natural springs. And depending on the season and depending how rainy it gets, but all this water is taken to the Jordan River. Obviously, there are other sources where the Jordan River comes from, but this is at least one water, maybe one third of all the water you can find in the River Jordan nowadays. And um, so we know that this site had been inhabited long before Jesus. And the areas, the region itself had been inhabited for thousands of years in general. So Tel Dan is just only one of the sites, one of the excavations that had been carried out in the area. By the way, this is just a popular site among Israelis in general. There's a great hike, very light. The only thing is that when you are up north, you should really stick to the markers. Don't really divert anywhere because well, you may get lost. And also, since we are in the area that is with very interesting and contentious past, I will tell about it in the end. So there are a lot of mines. So just be careful to stay within the route and don't just divert anywhere. Other than that, it's a great place. I loved it there, especially on a hot day by the springs. It always gets really refreshing. So, Banias. What is Banias? If you speak Russian, it might sound like a banya, a place where you can get a Russian banya, kind of a sauna. Maybe okay, maybe it's kind of the Roman bath. Actually, no, it comes from the word pan, and banyas is the word that got a bit distorted. The name got distorted through Arabic language. So it was panios from a word pan. So the creature from the Roman mythology from the so the creature living in the wilderness and yeah, so Pan. So Pan would normally emerge from the trees or from the bushes, scaring people, mocking people, hence the word panic in our languages. It comes from the word pan. And so why this place was called Banias? Maybe because they worship the pan there. So actually, they worship multiple gods here, multiple deities. We know that this is the old Roman site built clearly on top of a much older site. Obviously, again, a pagan one. And there were excavations at that time. I don't know if there are any excavations carried out at the moment due to the situation, but We know from multiple descriptions by Josephus Flavius, the Roman historian, that there was a big city built, and in the city there was a sanctuary of a Pan. There were temple of Augustus. There were niches to pray different gods. There was a temple of Zeus, Nemesis, the temple of the court of a Pan and the nymphs, the dancing goat, the sacred goat, and whatnot. So it was just a feast of paganism. Lovely. Beautiful architecture though. So, and the name, as I said, got changed throughout the period. And as you know now, many sites in Israel actually have two names, one in Hebrew and one in Arabic. And sometimes actually the names and the way they change, they tell us the history of the site just as they are. So, but that's, well, the Banias, the Panias. And uh, Panias was in the first century. It was rebuilt by Philip the Tetrarch, who was son to Emperor Herod, Herod the Great. And Philip Tetrarch, just like Herod, wanted to make Caesar happy. So in fact, Philip the Tetrarch renamed Panias into Caesarea after Caesar, Emperor Augustus. But there is already another Caesarea Maritima by the sea with the ancient artificial port, one of my favorite places to live stream in the entire Israel. And Caesarea is just a magnificent site anyway. So yeah, but there had already been one Caesarea, and well, Philip the Tetrarch named it Caesarea Philippi, also making sure he's not forgotten either. And this is how the city would exist, mentioned in multiple sources as the big place. But it was also famous for this very, very expensive worship. And in the first century, it was a notorious place. The Jews were not allowed to visit. Most probably, we don't know for sure, but it looks like Jews were not really allowed to visit such a pagan site. But Jesus couldn't care less because he wanted to preach. So he came to this place and together with his disciples, and he sat down somewhere overlooking the place called the gates of hell. I will show you. We will read the Matthew. We will see. You'll see what I'm talking about. But I found out, and this is the photo I found online. When I was there, this area there was still lots of excavations going on. Actually, they found the mosaic floor that dates back to Byzantine period. So it looks like this is the place, at least according to Byzantine tradition, where Jesus actually sat and discussed what we would be just reading from Matthew. And this does look like a gate of hell to me. To be honest, just see the scale. And also, but well, we don't know exactly why it is referred to as the gates of hell. Maybe because of this gigantic opening and all around it, they are niches. So those are niches for different deities, for different gods. So I believe I'm standing in the shrine of Pan. Exactly, that's the Pan. And you see all those small niches with lots of Greek inscriptions on them. Yeah, so clearly the Hellenistic pagan worship and different deities would be placed. And yes, they archaeologists have found the multiple figurines from that period uh, everywhere in the area. And so that's that's a mess over there. Expensive excavations. So maybe that is why it is called the Gate of House. That's a lovely spot, ideal for photographs, just ideal, and it's just I just like the architecture of the place in general. and it's all hewn in the rock. This is the bedrock, and it's all hewn in the rock. That's also important to understand. And um, so we don't we there it's not recorded whether there was really preaching, whether Jesus tried to attract the pagans of the city. They probably looked really weird in general and probably got lots of attention and attracted lots of onlookers. But so the idea was more, so we don't know the broader context, but let's just read it together. So this is like some three important events happened in Banias, in Caesarea Philippi, right? So Caesarea Philippi, that's the name already used by Matthew. So when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. But about you?" He asked, "Who do you say I am?" And Simon Peter, it's important, answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that there are Peter, and on this rock I will build, that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades, which means hell, will not overcome it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Then he ordered his disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. So we know that Simon was called Peter by Jesus, and Peter means rock. And we know that Peter was the man disciple, and he was given the gates to heaven, so that the gates of hell would never overcome it. So actually, all these absolutely basic notions for Christianity were shaped in Banias, were shaped in Caesarea Philippi, most probably overlooking that rock and that gigantic opening, right? So regardless whether you believe it or not, you can see the site, and you can see that the people of the 20th century are not the first ones who think this could be the site where the actual visit by Jesus and the disciples actually had happened. So the basic notions of Christianity are believed to have been shaped and formed there in the Roman pagan site Caesarea Philippi, overlooking the same spot that we are overlooking now. So this is mind blowing regardless what you believe in. Just in general, all these things converge, and I believe this is something really mind boggling. There are lots of ruins found of an extensive city, big construction, wide, elaborate, beautiful columns, and they are found granite, marble. These materials are not found in Israel, and hence they were very expensive, which meant it was important to bring them all the way here. And yes, Panias was on the crossroad of the trade route as well. Obviously, trade, obviously parts of the territory under control of the Romans. Yes, for sure, absolutely. And but we will continue with what's written in Matthew. So we know that from here, Jesus would set out on a trip to Jerusalem for the Passover festival. And so in Matthew 16, it's written, "From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and on the third day be raised to life." Obviously, the Gospels would be written after the event, so there is no way to say whether that's exactly how things happened. But so we know that Panias was also the place of great contemplation, and the way uh, that Jesus had to carry with him all the way to Jerusalem. And hence, by the time he arrived to Jerusalem, he walked there, obviously. He didn't take a bus. Um, I believe just also because of the quite a difficult trip, and also just thinking that over and over. Yeah, well, I believe anyone would have wept seeing Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives. But that would be for the next tour, and we carry on with Banias. So they were found dwelling houses, they were found shops, and the great number of the worship sites. So these are not all of them. It's not all of them. Again, Matthew 16, verse 24, 26. Verses 24, 26. Then Jesus said to his disciples, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? So again, these are some of the very, very basic, fundamental. I mean, by saying basic, I mean fundamental values, understanding, and concepts throughout the Christianity. All of that was uttered here, at least according to Matthew, and we don't know the rest of the story. So Barias, up north, miles away from Jerusalem, miles away from the center of Jesus' ministry, in this tiny, well, compared to Jerusalem place, such fundamental things were formulated by Jesus. So again, and hence the importance of this place. That's why there had been the church. It had been just recently has been recently found, and I'm not sure whether there have been any other findings made. But yes, for sure, the archaeologists have been looking for some Christian sites, and yes, it is believed that there used to be the ongoing pilgrimage, but the place is quite far. So we don't really know yet. I would say we don't know, we don't see the entire picture. Again, so lots of other archaeology from multiple temples. It doesn't even say which temple, just one of the temples. And so as you go further, higher, there would be the palace of another king of Judea, Herod Agrippa II, the great grandson of Herod the Great. So the palace would be on the elevation, and so this is a source from the internet. There were found coins. That's exactly how you would actually date the place, by finding the coins. And in the famous book on history of Jews, the Antiquities of the Jews by Josephus Flavius, there is I would say, something that he refers to in connection with Caesarea Philippi. Agrippa built Caesarea Philippi larger than it was before. So Caesarea Philippi had been extended. Would be extended after Philip the Tetrarch. And in honor of Nero, named it Neronius. Another emperor, another name, two brothers. And when he had built a theater at the Berytus with vast expenses, he bestowed on them shoes to be exhibited every year, and spent therein many 10,000 drachms, well, the currency. He also gave the people a largesse of corn and distributed oil among them. And yes, they were found windmills, not the windmills, sorry, they were found the mills for grains, and also they were found the olive presses. Exactly on elevation, so not in the old city, but in the kind of a newer city. It will be found there. I didn't go that high, so I wouldn't be able to show it to you, but I just believe what what's there on the information. And adorned the entire city with statues of his own, the nation, and with original images made by ancient hands. Nay, he almost transferred all that was ornamental in his kingdom Caesar. This made him more ordinarily hated by his subjects because he took those things away that belonged to them to adorn a foreign city. So even for Agrippa, it was quite far, and but for Agrippa, it was important to build the palace there because that place was on the junction of the trade route. Yes, obviously no connection with Jesus for Agrippa, but the connection with the city itself, economical interest. That's how big his palace must have been. This is just a rendering, the photo taken from the site. The pan playing the flute, right? So the coins found on the site and the coins with well date back to Agrippa's times. The so again the construction materials, right? Again, marble, granite, ornate capiteles of the columns, all of this and the size. So this well, okay, this must be the forum. So this was a big city. We know that. There was an aqueduct. There were bathhouses, and not all of this has been discovered yet. And it's not that easy to carry out the excavations in the Golden Heights in general. And also, how do we know that this place was important not only to Byzantines? Actually, there have been made another founding and another finding in connection with the Crusader period. So around the 12th century, it definitely dates to the period after the Battle of Hattin, where the Crusaders were defeated by Saladin, by Ayyubids, and after that they actually lost the Kingdom of Jerusalem, but they stayed throughout the coastal plain and up north. So there was found a construction that resembles Crusader architecture with the pointy arches. And we also know that the Mamluks, who would be exactly the rivals of the Crusaders at that time, the Muslims, they would destroy all the Crusader sites and build from the same construction material whatever they wanted, or they would would rebuild the Crusader construction the way they wanted. And it looks like this is the Crusader architecture over here, and within this, on top of this, was built a Mamluk shrine. Mamluks were notorious for building their own mm, huns, their own pilgrimage sites, exactly at the same spot where had been Christian sites before. We know that. And also, there was the big Byzantine church in this area found. Very big one, Byzantine church. So around 5th century, uh, 6th century Common Era, with clearly the basilica type. And you know that this would be the first architecture of Christian churches would be the basilica because the Byzantines just got the inspiration from the Hellenistic culture and they just took the basilica, which was used for like city halls back then, and they would adapt it for the needs of the church. It's just a rendering. We don't know really what the church looked like. It was big, judging by the outline and so in Mark, there is something else that we can read. And a certain woman which had an issue of the blood 12 years and had suffered many things of many physicians and had spent all that she had and was nothing bettered, but rather grew worse. And we know that Jesus also cured her. So the woman that had issue with the blood and the church is believed to have been commemorating that miraculous um, um, savior of that woman with the blood issues. So, not much information with connection with the church. So, but we know that there had been clearly the pilgrimage in the Byzantine period, clearly in the Crusader period, and well, I'll just briefly mention the geopolitical situation. Exactly in that site, there are lots of constructions from the times before the 1967 war, and this territory used to belong to Syria. after that war, after again the coalition of the Arab states attacked Israel in 1967, there was started a war, and the result of this war, this part was captured from Syria by the state of Israel. So, and but before the Syrians fled, they would be found. They would plant the endless amount of mines. They had started a way before, obviously, and that's why that area is very difficult to hike unless you choose designated path. So I'm just saying that and leaving you with that. And we're heading to Tiberias. So welcome to the refreshing waters of the Sea of Galilee. So Tiberias has the history of at least like 4 centuries of the life of the rabbis and tzaddikim, so the righteous Jews. So this is a very important city for Judaism, and yeah, so definitely we need to get back to this on another tour. But I just would like to take you to a church, to the church of Saint Peter's Church, and so Tiberias is not mentioned as a city in the New Testament where Jesus would be going. Tiberias was mentioned as the Sea of Tiberias, named after an emperor, right? So Roman emperor. And well, in John we read that the Sea of Galilee was referred as the Sea of Tiberias, and uh, um, and the church is built there not to commemorate a certain event or a miracle that happened there. No, it's just a Latin Catholic Church, St. Peter's Church, to commemorate just his importance. And yes, there had been a Byzantine church built before. So technically speaking, it's again just going back to the traditions, following the traditions, and the church is built from basalt stone, which is the igneous rock found all across the north of Israel, and this is the predominant construction material altogether. And 1100 CE, this is when the Crusaders also came. And yes, there have been found quite extensive ruins from the Crusader period as well. So the Crusaders came there because they knew there had been a worship site before them, that is in Byzantine period. So again, we are just following the same traditions again and again, again and again. And um, the church has beautiful artwork. Not that many survived to the day. Again, it's just, I would say, commemorating all the miracles that happened around the Sea of Galilee and Peter being the main disciple. And we know exactly how and where Peter was actually called Peter. He was given the name Peter, which means stone. We know where it happened. So the entire north in general and the Sea of Galilee and even the teeny tiny Caesarea Philippi has the great importance for Christianity, not just Jerusalem. And well, for example, there survived the decoration of the dome of the Peter in a boat, and also multiple miracles that happened in the Sea of Galilee. All of that happened in the Sea of Galilee, and Tiberias, the entire city, is built on the Sea of Galilee. And yes, so the statue of Peter with the gates from heaven, making sure that the gates of hell are locked. And there is this every year there is a great celebration of St. Peter's Day. Um, yeah, so basically this is it. The next tour on the ministry of Jesus is going to be the Church of Dominus Flevit, the God wept. On the Mount of Olives, we will be overlooking Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives. And also, actually, on Saturday, we're also going to visit the Mount of Olives, but this time it's going to be with a connection with the history of the Romanovs in the Holy Land. We're going to visit the church, the Mary Magdalene Church. Yes, Paul, right. Yes, Paul, right. So, part of the Jordan River waters come from Mount Hermon and the water springs, underground water springs that flow just out of the mountain. Yes, and there are also waterfalls. So, all this again, If had I taken you to on that hike, but I haven't taken that hike, I would have shown you the waterfall. Um, yes, exactly. So why would I say kill? Um, thank you, Dolores. So you've been able to join. I hope you've been able to figure out the timing right. Thank you, Dolores. Yeah, I hope, for more participants, but yeah, that's how it works for the time being. Should probably invest in the promos, but also it's yeah. But thank you so much, Dolores. It really means a lot to me. So the links for today. So one more tour tonight in 2 hours from now on a completely different subject. Next Saturday, I'm taking you to the Mount of Olives and the Church of Mary Magdalene. By the way, this is where actually two of the Romanovs are buried, and one of them is Alice of Battenberg, so related to Prince Philip. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Lynn Marie. You missed this. Well, the recording will be available shortly, hopefully tonight. So you're not really missing out on anything, hopefully. And thank you so much for supporting me, Lynn Marie. Thank you everyone for your support. You can make the donation on PayPal or send me a coffee. And yes, I'm still in Georgia. And this weekend, I just decided to stay in. And just because of the numerous protests all around the downtown, but I am bored. So next weekend, I am taking you on a live walk in Tbilisi. We're going to be dropping by some nice places where people hang out. And yeah, so I'll just hope I won't be stuck in the downtown. That's just it. Tell it all the time, sometimes event, right? Great. Robert, it's interesting because Eventbrite normally shows me my time zone when I check it. I also try to see Eventbrite. I mean, just the. I mean, when I check the Eventbrite schedule for other guys, it also shows me my time zone. So it should tell you your right time zone. Um, there's one more thing. I always include the direct link, the Zoom link for my Eventbrite tour. And if you click that link, your Zoom will also convert it to your time zone. It should. At least that's how it works for me. Um, this is interesting. I'm not sure why it shows a different, Robert. I need to see. Paul, coffees are the best. But I also know that the buy me coffee not always works great for everyone. So if it doesn't work, then PayPal is fine as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for your patience. So yes, for Sharon, and that's what I also believe that I used to think so that it shows the time where you are exactly. And if you travel, you should always readjust to the time zone you have that on your device as well. Thank you so much for joining. And anyway, whenever you are not uh, certain about the times of the tour, you can always contact me. Okay, so great, Lynn Marie. Thank you for corroborating that. Yes, it should adjust to your local time zone. Otherwise, people wouldn't have been using it this much. Anyway, as I said, there are always direct links in all my tour descriptions, and I use Eventbrite mainly as a as a service that also sends notifications to everyone who has ever at least once planning to be promoting my tours as well, because this is a big platform. So that's why I'm using Eventbrite, but you don't have to be seeking to Eventbrite, because I also have my website. So also the schedule for the Guides Collective as well. See you later. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bob, Robert, Robert, Bob. Thank you so much. Tonight at 7 p.m. your time. My time is going to be 11 p.m. in less than 2 hours from now. Thank you, Lynn Marie. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your interest. And I'll be scheduling the tour for the next weekend shortly. And if you are not subscribed to my newsletter, please do on my website. You will have the button to click, and it will do all the job. Thank you so much, and bye bye.